Good morning, moms. Welcome to our schoolroom. We're going to give you just a little bit of a tour, and then I'm going to go over some ways that we set up our homeschool, which is going to be completely different from the way you set up your homeschool. But if you can glean some ideas, awesome. I want to start off by saying that every single year, the way that we homeschool changes. And so last year was completely different from the year before, completely different from the year before. We have homeschooled at the kitchen table. We've had kids set up with desks in their own rooms. We have had a little bit of a schoolroom in our basement. We have done it all different ways. Sometimes we've sat on the couch, and that's been where we homeschooled because we had nursing babies and little ones running around, and that was really the most practical way to do it. So this is what is working for us this year, and I really love it because I tend to be more of an organized person. I like everything in its place. I like things neat and tidy. Really all the opposite things that happen in a school day. So what I want to start by telling you is that I'm so excited about having this recorded because this is the last time this schoolroom is going to look this way because we start school on Monday. And I can tell you between now and Monday, my kids will be up here making messes, and they will get into stuff, and they'll look through other school stuff, and they'll leave it out, and they'll leave messes, and they'll ask if they can do an art project that's in their art ahead of time, and I'll say sure, but make sure you clean up your mess, and it won't get cleaned up, and yeah, you know how that all goes. Okay, so first of all, we have 4 children homeschooling this year, and so we have 4 areas. This is our next youngest son's place. He's my messy kid. He has stuff everywhere. So I'm hoping that having him contained right here, I'm going to get after him quicker before his mess actually blossoms into the entire room. So he has all of his stuff, plus I have supplies and things up here. So he has his basic schoolwork all set up here, and then we just have supplies and things underneath it here. This is where I put everything as they complete it for the year, and then I just take the whole bin and store it. I mark it with what the year is. I have our science supplies underneath it there that are kind of big and bulky, and then he's using the computer drawer to basically work at. This is their summer project. They're working through the case of the missing mountain, so that's what that is. And then he's got all of his little stuff, and you will never, ever, ever see this neat again until next year at this time when I've set it all up. Okay, and then we have our little fossil and rock display of things that we collected over the years. Cool little story on this one. This is the fossil of a snakehead, and my sons found this. My son actually found a rock in the driveway, thought it was a cool rock, and pieces of the rock started breaking away from it, and we discovered it was a fossilized snakehead that was in our driveway rock in New York. So pretty cool story, so we like to kind of always know where that is. Little backstory on my little chevron thing that hide art supplies. This is my bins that I've talked about where we keep our any of those types of experiment supplies. They go in here so my kids know where to go when they need to go get what they need. I had everything just kind of stacked in these cubes, but we have a very curious, very large puppy in the house, and she delights in stealing art supplies. So I had to get these to hide everything because she absconded with a whole thing of yarn and in seconds flat had it destroyed. So that's why I went to those instead of just leaving everything open. So then we have our youngest Elijah. He sits here, and all of his stuff is here. All of the felt and paper and all that is here because I just have no place else to put it, and it makes a good dividing line between him and our oldest son, Jamin. Both of them have a computer. If Gabriel has something he has to do on the computer, then he shares with Elijah for that. But the thing that I wanted to really show you here is this is our son Kurt. Kurt has fetal alcohol syndrome, and he's profoundly affected, and he has a lot of sensory issues. And so this works really well for him. It's a room within a room. We've tried all different scenarios with him, and this really helps with him actually getting his schoolwork done. He can't have access to his regular work, which is all here, while he's homeschooled, except while he's doing it, because he's very destructive. This is his Bible, so he's only allowed to have his Bible when he actually needs it, and then we take it back when he's done. And the other thing that we do with him is he can't have regular pencils, and so he has his own thing of pencils. If you notice, they have no eraser end, because he actually pulls them apart and eats them, metal and all. So we actually sharpen on both sides. So for those that might have some kids that struggle with some issues, this is one way that we have solved it. Now, we did have to put something on the top, because what he was actually doing is climbing it and stealing stuff from shelves and things. And we also don't want him getting dismantling this, and we also have to keep a camera on him because he does a lot of dangerous things, like eating metal parts to pencils. So that makes it so that if I have to be downstairs and he's still doing his schoolwork, I can still keep an eye on him. And this top part keeps him from getting access to any of these things that are needed. So when he's doing school, we actually shut the curtain. And so that's how we have our son's desk set up, who has some special needs. So you'll see we've got all of our books. We have our library. I love books. Right now I have a few open spots, which kind of makes me want to buy more books. But yeah, this is our book collection. And then I scrapbook, and so the room is actually a multifunctional room. So this is my little scrapbook area, and then this is my office. So this is where I work from. This is where I write the language lessons. Well, this desk is new, so I'm excited about having extra space, because I was working over there. It was pretty tight. So this is exciting. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty now of how I actually set up paperwork, what my process is for organizing the school year, the nuts, bolts, functionality. So this is how I homeschool. Now, I've been working for a lot of years while homeschooling. And so this has come out of a very busy schedule. I've always worked from home. We owned our own business, but I needed a way to make it so that if I get pulled away on some extra work projects, that my kids weren't waiting on me to set their lesson plans. So this stuff falls out. So this is my main organization notebook. I did upgrade it this year. Randy actually brought home this nice little binder because mine was falling apart. So I got a new binder this year. So this is what I do. I start the year off, and I have my handy dandy little chart here. And I call this my shopping chart. And I start the year off with everything that I want the kids to take, what curriculum I'm going to do, which is always Master Books, unless Master Books doesn't have what I need. So right now we don't have art, so I'm getting art somewhere else. So if I have it on hand, I put an H in. This is all filled because now I have everything. And this is the cost of where I need to purchase it. And at the end of all of it, I have how much I've actually spent for the year. So it tracks, so I can kind of see how we're doing from year to year. So I have a chart for each of the kids, and then at the end, I tally it all. So you can see, you're getting a sneak peek. Yes, CBD and Rainbow are where I buy my curriculum. That's not Master Books. So I buy everything, get everything from Master Books. But if we don't have what I need, or I need some extra things to add to it, some manipulatives that we don't carry, then that's where I buy it. So you just got that little sneak peek. Okay, so that's my plan. Then I have a worksheet that keeps me on track because I have been homeschooling up to 6 children at a time, down to 4. This is like, I've done 5 to 6 kids for a long time. Now I'm down to 4. So I like organization, so I try to stay super organized. So I have little codes here to know that I did certain things. I mark them off. Again, this is, the subject that they're need to do, that I want them to do, the curriculum that we're using, and then I put any notes in here as I'm setting it up. So sometimes if I need to say we're doing chemistry and I need to get all the equipment and all the supplies, I might put some notes in there. Oh, we still need the chemicals or whatever. So that's how I track my setup for the year. So that's how I stay organized for me. I also create a schedule for each of the kids, and I do up a master family schedule so that we know at any specific time where the kids should be, so if they're not there. I also do up a master schedule for the year, and each one of the kids gets their own, and I keep it in my binder. Each child has a tab. This is where I custom make my own spreadsheet for each child for their grades. So sometimes the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is for me to put in their quizzes, tests. Sometimes there are no quizzes and tests, and so I just put the first, second, third, fourth quarter and fill in grades, and then their end of the year grades. So that's how I personally track grades. Now this is what we do. This is what I do for the year. I create a yearly schedule. This will get changed around a little bit, but I have each subject, and then the week. Master Books makes it really easy because I can just do math day 1, math day 2, and so on and so forth, and then I'm done. So I love that about Master Books. So this is how I do my record keeping. Then I also keep track of, this is when each child will graduate, and then this is my future planning. And so I have the subjects and ideas for curriculum, because you know how that is. You find this wonderful curriculum idea and then you forget about it. Or like here I have logic handwritten in, because we're creating the logic course. So I want Gabe to take that in 8th grade. I have that marked here. And I will add this in later. I'll type it in, but I handwrite notes and then I'll go back and add them into my spreadsheet. So that's something that I do to plan out the future. So I have all their years ahead printed out and things that we're going to add in, so I don't forget those awesome ideas that I had. Okay, so that's my shopping. I keep then a copy of the basic law for the state that I live in. Some of this has actually been printed from the state's website, and some of it is printed from HSLDA. And then I keep an inventory of some of my things that I have loaned out. I just keep basic information on a bunch of different places, and then miscellaneous HSLDA membership goes in the back. So that is my binder, everything in it.
What program do you use to create spreadsheets?
Excel. I'm just basic.
And can you talk a little bit about having structure in the day in the school area versus a more relaxed, what you found?
Sure. Everybody has a different lifestyle. For me, I have to work. And so I am actually here working. And what happens is the kids have their set goals. And if they need help with something, I'm accessible. They can come, they can ask me questions. Sometimes they get a little carried away and I have to say, okay, I can't listen to these 3 different stories about whatever's on their mind right at that moment. So I have to keep them focused that during the school day, we have to focus on school. So they bring over their stuff. There are some things that if we're having a busy week, I say, okay, we're just not going to do that today. So I can maintain some flexibility in there, but our world has to be more structured because of our lifestyle. Otherwise, nothing's going to get done. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. What grades are you teaching this year?
Oh, you're asking a homeschooler about grades? Oh, I have it right here. See? This is my cheat sheet. So I amend this every year. There's my grades. That's what I'm teaching. Now, Kurt is fluid because he does not have the ability to think in the abstract. In the state standards, I also held him back a year, but he's way back, so.
The future planning sheet, is it possible to share?
Yes, I can write that. Well, yes, I'll make sure that I upload it if it's not uploaded already.
Now for us, we've homeschooled everywhere, right? We've homeschooled at the table, we've homeschooled everywhere.
Yes.
Having a designated school area and having a daily schedule works well for our kids and our family because of the schedule we keep.
Yes. Yes. And I know people, it's really warm in here, so I'm sorry. I understand everybody's going to do it different. So yeah, absolutely. Hey, there's one other thing a couple things I wanted to show that we missed when we did the tour of the homeschool room. Okay, so this is our tub of pencils. I thought some of you might get a laugh out of that because yes, we will use all these pencils as my kids chew them, as they do whatever it is they do to pencils. And I do like to start off with a fresh supply, but there are some, as I'm sure you all know, like this one. This is a leftover that I let them keep. It's the Freedom Guide Dogs, which my children have a special attachment because it came from a homeschool convention. And so we do have our special little old pencils that are still left over from previous years. But I go through and I purge them and we start over. And yes, my favorite pencils are Ticonderoga, but my kids just, I don't know what they do to pencils, so I won't spend that kind of money on them. And this was this year's brilliant idea. So I scrapbook. Those who scrapbook will recognize this. This is a crafter's thing, or if you do deal with glitter. My pencil, these turn black. I end up with shavings everywhere. And so I had the brilliant idea of taking my little glitter pan here with leftover glitter. And this has the nice little thing, and so I was able to feed it through, and I'm hopeful this year that that's gonna help me. Now these trays are where when my kids take quizzes and tests, they'll put them in here and they'll start to stack up for me to grade or Randy to grade.
And somebody asked, even when the kids were younger, did the schedules work?
Yes. However, when they're younger, I have to follow with them. I have to cross off what they've done with them. I still direct it, but I start the training of it when they're younger. And it keeps me on task of knowing what they need to do. Now, I only print off a quarter of the school year at a time. And I do that because I'm always making adjustments. And so I might have to skip some things. I might have to move things down in a subject. I might have to vary it a little bit, and so I only print off a quarter at a time. But for the younger students, I start doing the schedule starting in first grade. But it's more to keep me on track, and so that I'm not, like I said, if I get busy with a work project, then I'm not, oh no, what are we supposed to be doing? How far behind are we? I have it right there. This is what we're supposed to do, and I'm not trying to figure it out with a really busy schedule. But I go through it with the student. I start training them. I start teaching them, okay, your math, what does it say? Oh, it says to do pages, 8 and 9. Okay, go get your math book. Bring it here. So I start training my kids really young to be as independent as possible. That has come about by necessity with 9 children, one with special needs. And, in the early years, of course, it was just crazy with keeping up with babies and toddlers and all of that. Now, when we had our business starting about then, that's when I started having a need to have a lot more structure. I didn't have the luxury of winging it because we would just get nothing done.
So, in the process of homeschooling, we've homeschooled over 20 years.
Yes.
Used a lot of different curriculums.
Yes.
We graduated from an ACE school, so anybody who's familiar with a School of Tomorrow ACE school would recognize the desks, individual workstations, goal sheets, that type of thing. What are some of the other influences that influence Masterbook's curriculum from what you've learned over the 20 years and working with supporting a lot of families as well?
Well, there's pluses and minuses to all curriculum. I would say one of the biggest things is the inflexibility of a lot of curriculums. When we started developing curriculum at Master Books, something that was really important to me and remains important to me is having flexibility, because I know that out in the real world, there's just life happens. And not only that, but by definition, homeschooling is a unique thing for every single family out there. Not only that, within the family unit, there's uniqueness for each school year. And so to me, that part of curriculum has been very inflexible in a lot of cases. And so it was really important for me that we keep our curriculum very, very flexible, and that the parent is in charge of how this goes. So one of the ways that I guess I'll have to pull it out because I don't actually have one of the ways is our schedule, our master supply lists. You put the due date that you want your child. If you don't want to use the due date column, you don't have to. You could use something like I did, or you can just wing it. You can use the check mark boxes in order to, mark off what you've done. So at least if you get off track, you know where you are. Or if you want to do a different schedule, you know where you are in it all. And it also can be a place where your student checks it off, and that's their accountability. If they say they checked it, it's done, and it's not done, that's a lie. And so then that needs to be dealt with on a whole different level. So there's a lot of flexibility in the way that we do our daily schedule. And that's really important to me. And the same with the grade column. I think parents need to grade whatever it is they want to grade. And so if you want to grade every lesson, you're free to do that. If you want to grade just quizzes and tests, you're free to do that. If you don't want to grade anything, you're free to do that too. And so flexibility is really key. Having things like the master supply list. My son is doing just the human body part of this particular course. It's the Answers in Genesis. We did he wanted to do different components of different things, and so I let him. So he's doing the zoology course, but we replaced some things with the human body. So when we were designing our part of this, it was really important to me that there were check mark boxes, and I went through and scanned it and made sure the things that I checked off were things that I didn't have on hand. And I wanted to make sure that I had those on hand. I crossed off some things. We're not going to do the dissection. Just being real here. So I crossed it off. And then on the worksheets themselves, so when he does the Names of Bones Day, he has the supply list, and I will have him check those off. So I wanted the supply list a master, but I also wanted a supply list for the project itself. And so there's some things like that I know how a busy homeschool mom's life is, with a lot of distractions in the day. And so ease of use is very, very important to me. And so that got worked into the system. So speaking of ease of use, this is how I use our curriculum. So this is a binder. All my kids have a binder. They don't all have nice closable flaps like this. The closable flap one went to my son, who tends to be a mess. So you can see he has the Well, let's go in the beginning. There's some sheets in here that I wanted them to complete about themselves that I printed off the internet. He has his daily schedule, household schedule. Their daily schoolwork schedule is on their bulletin boards. So they each have one on their bulletin boards. So they have their calendar, and then it goes into then from there whatever is unique to their particular school year. So here he has the human body master list, followed by the daily schedule for it. And then I pulled this out of the book, the teacher guide, and then I also pulled out the worksheets. I normally don't pull the worksheets out, but because he was only doing the human body in this book, I pulled out the worksheets too. But that's not usually how I do it. Usually, and then I just have helpful things here. Oh, this goes to his math. You can see here's one of the mats. I put it in this and keep it in his binder, so he always knows where it is. And so normally, though, like I said, I wouldn't put the worksheets in there, but sometimes I do. And that's what I mean about flexibility. We all do it different, and we do it different sometimes right down to different subjects. I also have a binder that I have our quizzes and tests answer keys in. And so in this binder, this is, Randy and I keep this one for all of the answers. And so like in here, Gabriel's doing the Bible grammar course this year. And so we have the quiz answers in here. And so when he takes those quizzes, we have them. And that's another thing that we've been trying to really work on, is making sure that our quizzes and test answers are removable without other stuff on one side. So yeah, so this is where I keep all the quizzes and test answers by student. And then what I do is I just put little sticky tabs for their subjects within each student. That's how I do it. It's just easy that way. So this one is the human body, so I just have a little sticky tab. The main one is under Gabe, and then the individual subjects.
And this is quizzes and test answer keys because that's all we score.
Right. And I can show you, well, let me show you the next. Each one of my children has their own binder, and I'll show you where I keep them in a minute. In the binder are their subjects, and so they, like this is Gabriel's elementary Bible and English grammar. And so I will grade, of course, his writing projects and all of that, but he can grade all the worksheets. And this is, you know, Randy and I being graduating from a ACE school, we did all of our scoring. And so I thought that was a really good way for our children to have some independence, and then not all the work falls on me, especially with how many children that I homeschool at once. So this is the grading section. So what a student's going to do is they're going to bring their worksheets up here, and they're going to open up their answer key. They're going to grab one of these pens. They're just colored pens of all sorts and sizes. I also use this little section as a place to hold scissors and commonly used stuff. So let's say their favorite color is green, so they can mark their stuff wrong. That's wrong, and then they can go back to their desk and correct it, and then they circle the X again. That's something we borrowed from ACE that's how we do it in our homeschool. So each student has their own answer keys. Kurt doesn't do his own because he just can't. So
for the average student, though, our average student, it's an honor system.
Yes.
They're responsible to learn the material.
Yes.
If they aren't honest and they cheat, it will show up on the quiz or the test.
Correct.
Because we don't let them score their own test.
Correct.
So it's kind of, but it takes that burden of daily scoring, the daily fight, off your desk, puts it onto the student.
Right, and it puts the responsibility for their education on their shoulders. And, every single quarter, when we start to tally these things and take a real close look, sometimes I'll catch things through through the course of time. But when I do a more fine-tuned look once every quarter, that keeps me on track to make sure I'm checking their stuff regularly, and it keeps them on track as well. So routinely, my children will mark off things that are not done. They will do all sorts of stuff. They won't bother to grade their material. So we catch them up in all sorts of things, and then they're held responsible for that, usually in the form, if it's lying, usually in the form of writing proverbs.
Rachel says no, green is only for the supervisor, which would be the correct ACE answer.
Yes, I have rebelled slightly from the ACE model. That's funny. She knows the ACE system. Yes, the younger Kristen used only red pens. The older Kristen has relaxed quite a bit from some of those things.
Well, somebody
That's
said,
funny.
so very organized puts me to shame.
No.
This is 20 years of
Fine-tuning. Yes, this is 20 years worth, and you know what? I would scrap it all in a heartbeat if it no longer worked for our family. So this is, and you also have to realize my personality type is organized. And so I don't function well if things are not organized. Now, the room gets to be a mess quite regularly. And that's one of the things I've asked Randy's assistants with, is to keep on the kids cleaning up their stuff, because their nature is not necessarily mine. They don't mind working in chaos. They don't mind tripping over all the art supplies, science supplies from the past 3 months. So I can't work in that. And so that's my personality type. And it's okay to be completely different. The point of this is just to show, hey, this is what we do. This is how I use it. This is how I organize my stuff. If you can get an idea from what I do and incorporate it, great. If you don't get anything from this, that's okay too. I just find it interesting to see how everybody does it different. There are some of these videos that I watched that some of our moderators have done on how they do it, and I find it fascinating, even though it wouldn't work with my particular situation.
Right.
So, and that's why we do what we do.
Well, in the process too, the way we're set up, because we've had a lot of babies, we've had a lot of times,
Yes.
busy seasons in businesses, or times like you're writing, and
Yes.
the whole family has to rally around to do their chores and whatever.
Right.
We're able to kind of coast for a couple of weeks at a time,
Right.
because the system itself runs everything, and you just have to kind of keep making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to.
Exactly. But that's our lifestyle. That's not necessarily, for some of this, for some people, this organization is way overkill. They're going to spend more time actually doing some of this organizing than what they would if they just did it as they went along. And so it absolutely is not a one-size-fits-all. This system keeps my household running semi-smoothly.
You're also fairly vocal about the fact that you don't necessarily enjoy the teaching, sitting
Yes.
at a table and teaching, and so
No.
you want a system that gives the children the education that you want them to have, but
Right.
not necessarily require you to have to be the one, where other people
They
thrive on
enjoy
that
teaching.
and should,
Yes.
if that fits their style.
Yes, and that's the other thing about me working. I work because I want to, not because I have to. That's me. I really enjoy having something other than homeschooling, cooking, and cleaning. And I recognize that for some people, they get a lot of satisfaction in all of that, and that's not me. And that's okay. It's okay that I'm me, and it's okay that they're them. And so when you're looking at how anybody does their homeschooling, keep in mind that we're all unique, and God has called us all to very unique things. And so this is what keeps us functioning in the way God has called us to, I don't know, the way God's called us, where He's called us, how He's called us. And so, and with our own unique interests, our own unique skills, our own, God creates us all individually. And our families and the children within our families are all really unique. And that's why I'm going to show you like this. This is Gabriel's thing. And for Gabriel, it's really important that Gabriel has this little folder. This is stuffed full of things that Gabriel needs to have at his desk to make his life somehow complete. And this stuff will be scattered everywhere if I don't give him a folder. Now this is the cleaned out version. I have him at the end of every school year clean this out and only keep what he absolutely wants to keep for the new school year. And so...
Like he'll keep a scrap of paper for 12 years if we...
Yes. And it will stack up in piles. And so we have to start fresh. But he, colored his thing. And so for him, that works. I don't need this for some of the other kids. But for Gabriel, this is essential every single year. The other thing that's essential is he gets his own notebook to write whatever in. And so that keeps him from having pieces of paper everywhere. And so that keeps him a little more tidy. And so those are some things, just some practical things that I've learned to, instead of fighting against it, to add components into how I set things up that complement who God designed him to be without driving me utterly crazy and having to trip over his abundance of things. So I just kept these out to show this is how I'm not sure why I kept this one out, but this is how I pull out the quizzes and tests and answers. Yeah, that's what I'm not sure why I did. So neither one of these were really good examples. So what I do is when I get one of these, I pull out the daily schedule. It's not pulled out of this one. Don't know why. This one probably came off the shelf instead of Gabe's thing. So I pull the schedule out. I usually leave all the worksheets in. I go to the back of the book and I pull out quizzes, tests, and answer keys, and then put them in the proper binder, which I've shown you, my binder system. So answers to the regular work go in the kids' binder. Answers to quizzes and tests go in my binder. And here it is. Okay, so I have one more binder that I didn't show. This binder actually holds all of their quizzes and tests. So Elijah, we're doing Fight for Freedom this year. This was by the Boyers, the biographies of the Revolution. So his tests, I can just, I don't let the kids go get their quizzes. They have to ask me. And that way, if there's anything that I know they haven't studied well, or they were supposed to turn in an essay on something, I can kind of catch that and say, oh, okay, you need to go get that. Plus, I don't want them knowing what's on the quizzes and tests ahead of time.
Sometimes there's confusion on why we call a teacher guide rather than a student book. But typically that's because there's stuff that you wouldn't give to a student.
Correct.
Like answer keys, quizzes, and tests.
Correct. So this is what I do with each one has one or two of these, depending on how many, and I store them in there, and then when we need a quiz or a test, this binder doesn't fit up here. It's too tall, so I had to find an alternate. Usually I keep it at my desk, but I tucked it here where I can see it. So that's where the quizzes and tests. So I pull out the stuff out of here, put them in all the different binders that we have, whether it's the kids or mine. I keep the quizzes and tests, I keep the school year binder, and I keep the test binder with me. And then each student has their own binder, and then we have the answer key binders. And then at the end of the year, I have one last binder. Oh, you don't know how many binders you have until you're showing people how you use your binders. Okay, so I have two of these. This one says the Arkansas years. I have another one that says the New York years. Each state has their own set of requirements, and I don't know, it just seemed easy way to do it. So I have high school transcripts here, copies, so if I need to they need one for a job or whatever, they have it in their permanent record, but I like to keep some extra copies of them. So that's what this is. The kids who graduated in New York, their transcripts are in the New York years binder. So these are things that, like this, you notice is this. So I just take this, 3-hole punch it, and put it in there at the end of the year. And so I have her transcript, again, a copy because she graduated. This is all last year's stuff. The paperwork, I actually didn't show that in my binder. I also keep all the filled out paperwork. And then I put a copy of their curriculum plan in there, a copy of our school year. I do a high school plan chart, and so for the high schoolers, I put that in there. All their records where I filled in all those grades. And for each student, I put in a copy of what their daily schedule was. And this is what I put in for each year. And I do that to cross my T's and dot my I's in case we're not required to keep a portfolio, but this gives me a really good place to put the master records that would be important if we were ever questioned on that. So that is my final binder, unless I think of another one that we're using that I didn't cover, but I don't think so. So that's it. Any other questions?
I don't think we have any that we can't go back through and answer.
So this is how the Pratts homeschool.
How many have you graduated?
He's holding up 5 so that I know, so I don't have to sit there and count. So yes, we have graduated 5. We have 4 more to go. Our oldest one this year is going into high school. That's, of homeschooling age. So he's going into 9th grade, and our youngest is going into 4th grade. So I've got 4th through 9th graders this year.
And we would just encourage families to give themselves room for growth.
Oh, absolutely.
Comparison is the death of happiness.
Yeah, please do not. This schoolroom actually rocks. This is the best homeschool we've ever had as far as having the equipment and the space that is comfortable. We have homeschooled in, let me tell you, we've had some pretty tiny spaces with a lot of people. I've had crates, milk crates with my basic school stuff in them. Yeah, we've had them stuffed in cupboards, not kids, books. We've done it in all different ways. And so this happens just to be a really good year for us. And this is how it's actually going to be for the next 4 years, because I don't have anybody graduating for 4 years. There's a big age difference between Joy and Jamie.
So Desiree asked if we could give a quick description of how MasterBooks works for people new. A lot of what you've learned over the 20 years and
Sure.
kids.
Let me see if I can pull up. Let's do America's Story. Let me grab. I think America's Stories is a really good because it shows. Well, let's do 2. We'll do America's Story and then we'll do My Story 2 because those show the 2 different formats. I'm inhaling my hair. Hang on. Okay. And I love our new office chairs. We got all matching office chairs for the first time ever. So it's nice I get to roll around. But the kids also play bumper chairs with it. Okay. So we have America's Story 1. We have what we call the student book. And the student book is like a student textbook. And so, okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Even though we say student textbook, our feel tends to be much more personable than a traditional textbook in a lot of our courses. And so this is a student textbook, but it's not written like a traditional textbook. And so, but it's, you can recognize it as such as you look through it. All the readings, all the information is in there. And so this would be your textbook and all the different. Now each one is going to be set up a little different. It's going to have a little different flow, a little different feel to it. And then we have our teacher guide. So the teacher guide, as Randy pointed out, has things in it that you wouldn't just give to the student. We put everything in one book to save on the cost of having to buy separate quizzes, a book for that, separate answer key, all these different components. Not only is there added costs, production costs, it adds extra storage costs for us. And so there's a lot of reasons why this saves a lot of money for homeschoolers, to have it all in one. And it just makes it simpler. So we have the information about the course in the front, any particular things you might need to know. And then we have the daily schedule. And then we have your worksheets. And again, we call them worksheets, but worksheets come in a lot of different flavors. They're not just your typical fill in the blank sort of things. Usually, a lot of times they have extra activities included that are optional, and great ideas, extension ideas. So there can be a lot of variety between courses in what these look like. So we have that, and then in the back of the book we have this is a final review sheet, any quizzes, tests, reviews, that sort of thing, templates that you might need. It depends on the course of what's back here, but a lot of goodies usually. And then the answer keys are also in the back, and the answer keys to quizzes and tests. And in this case, there's some timeline cards. And so that's the basic structure of a course that has a separate teacher guide. Now, you have my story here, and this is all in one. We've tried to put a lot of our younger courses, especially the new ones that we're coming out with, as all-in-ones. For basically, we're aiming for anything K to 2, K to 3 in that grade range to be all-in-ones. So in this one, you're not going to have your separate teacher guide. It's an all-in-one, but similar to the teacher guide, I should say separate student textbook. Similar to a teacher guide, you have the 3-hole punch and the perforated pages, which Tim is working tirelessly to solve our perf issues. Thank you to Tim. And I will say this year, putting stuff together, we had a lot fewer perf issues in my own homeschool in trying to put this stuff together. So you'll see in the beginning of the book, you still have your master schedule, all the information about the course, and then you jump into the lesson part of it, and the worksheets are built right into it. And then you have the answers and any quizzes in the back. And so an all-in-one is set up a little bit different. Now we also have the teacher guides that use a book or multiple books. And so this would be the third type of teacher guide that we have. So we have the sets where you have a student textbook and you have a teacher guide that goes with it. You have the all-in-ones where everything is in there, the student book and the teacher guide. And then you have these nice little hybrids. And these will use a real book, usually one that we publish. And it also has all of the things that you need, the beginning material, the daily schedule, the worksheets, and then quizzes, tests, and all the answers in the back. And so this is the third type of course that we publish. So basically all of our courses are going to be in one of these 3 formats. And we are a young earth, biblical-based publishing company. So everything that we publish is going to have that worldview in it. Is there anything else? So that's the basic way of doing it. And you can find samples on our website of most of these, if not all of our courses.
So immediately following this, or I guess in a few minutes. Rebecca with Homeschool On and Angela are actually going to be doing a live Q&A
On Angela's
on
math.
the math lessons for living education. So
Yep.
we hope everybody can switch over to watch that.
Yep. And I'll be watching it from right here. This is where I answer your questions from.
It's the other half of the magic.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.